Hello and happy Friday, nonprofit accidental techie family. It's Friday. It's 12:30 Eastern time, and you know what that means. It's time for a little live stream, Facebook, YouTube, and as of today, LinkedIn. So thanks, LinkedIn folks, for approving live streaming on LinkedIn. Today, we are going to spend about 15 or 20 minutes talking about software contracts. And if you're new here, I'll just do a little introduction. My name is Maureen. I'm a nonprofit digital strategist and technology coach. And every Friday afternoon, about this time, I go live on social media sites to talk about a topic that folks who work inside nonprofit organizations need to think about. They need some guidance, they need some advice and practical wisdom. So today, we're going to do a little tour of software contracts, understanding software contracts, knowing what you're signing before you actually sign. So this is really an important topic because just about all of us have had a moment where we signed something in our lives, whether it was a software contract or a car loan or whatever it is, and we told ourselves that we read it. We told ourselves that we understand it. And in some cases, that's been okay. And in other cases, it's kind of been a problem. So software contracts particularly are hard to understand. And I want to kick off this session this afternoon with a bit of a cautionary tale. Sometimes I share stories. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. So I want to tell you a little story about Crystal. So Crystal is a very sharp development director, works at a mid-sized organization that is focused on advocacy and fundraising, like we all are, right? So Crystal hired me a couple of years ago to come in and review their systems and their business processes, serve up some findings and recommendations, which I did. And part of the recommendations included, if you're not happy in the systems that you're using now, you might want to look at some of these. There's a couple of them out there that might be a really great fit for you and your organization. So the project wrapped a couple years ago. I left the project role and our paths did not cross again until last month when Crystal reached back out to me. And she said, listen, we're having some glitches with our onboarding. We actually looked at the products that you recommended. We picked one of them, signed the contract, having a couple of bumps in our actually getting started, moving in to our new system. And so can you lend me a hand? So I said, of course, I'm happy to do that. And one of the first things that I asked her was to send me the proposal documents, the contract documents, so that I could sort of get a mental picture in my head of what was going to happen in this migration. And I could coach Crystal behind the scenes or maybe talk to the software company a little bit, smooth out the bumps, get everybody happy and moving along again. When I looked at their software contract, and I do this all the time, I review contracts for my clients. I sometimes get hired just to review software contracts for people. So I'm very familiar with kind of like all the different layouts and the language and things like that. And when I looked at this contract, my friends, I was shocked and appalled that anybody would actually sign this document, but sign it they did. And, I hear these sad tales of what I'll call misunderstandings in software sales cycles or contractual agreements. I didn't know, they didn't explain. Now I got to pay. I'm not sure what to do. And I understand. I totally get it. These documents are dense, right? They're pages and pages and pages. They're full of legalese and, disclaimers and mediation states and all that kind of stuff. They've got sometimes really scary big numbers depending on your organization and the systems that you're moving into, and a lot of technical jargon. So it's only natural that our eyes just kind of like glaze over. We pull up the old e-sign and we kind of sign our life away. But that's really what you're doing when you are signing a contract and you don't get it. And it's not your fault that you don't get it. You're not trained to do this stuff. Maybe you've never signed a software contract before in your life. But, your board, your team, the software vendor, this company that you're entering into a new partnership with is relying on you to actually know that it's cool, that the contract is in shape to sign. If you just say, well, I think it's going to be okay. I've had 1,000 hours of conversations with the salesperson. I am confident, but you still haven't really gleaned whether the stuff that you think you're buying is in that contract. Signing before you really know is a giant mistake that can be very, very hard to get out of. So, disclaimer moment here, I am not a lawyer. I don't even play a lawyer on TV. But as a card-carrying technology coach who helps nonprofit teams make good decisions about their technology, here is my advice about what you need to see in a software contract and understand before you sign it. Number one, there's 7 things, so get ready. Number one is a detailed list of the functionality that you're actually buying. Maybe it's a list of the modules, right? You get a database, you get an email marketing tool, you get an advocacy tool, or just a list of the things that the software can do. I need to use this to send SMS messages to my supporters and my subscribers. Should be that language in there that says SMS testing. Texting is part of the deal, part of what you're getting. So detailed list of the functionality you're buying should be in the contract. That's number one. Number two, limits. Any limits that are called out in your contract, and common limits that I see are things like the number of records that you're allowed to have inside your database. Maybe you can only have 50,000 records in there. Maybe it's 1 million. But usually in most products, there's some kind of record limit in a database, and a fundraising tool, email marketing tool. The other limits that I see are the number of licenses, user licenses, or administrators that you're permitted to have. Some systems say it's a free-for-all. You can have as many people in here doing stuff as you want. Other systems say you can have up to 25 users. You can have up to 3 users. So it's not uncommon to see those limits in software contracts. The other limit that I see a lot, especially when there is email messaging, marketing functionality, is the number of emails, the literal number of emails, not subscribers, but the number of emails that are sent out of the system every month. It's a very common place to say you get to send 300,000 email messages a month out of our system. And when you go over that, you start to send 305,000, you get dinged. You will need to pay a fee, an overage fee. So look for those limits and make sure you understand, and it's a place that you can go negotiate. That's a pro tip. If you're like, hey, it says 4 administrators and I need 10, that's an easy thing for you to go back to the salesperson and renegotiate before you sign. Much easier to clean that stuff up before you're locked into those limits because you signed the contract. So limits are the second thing. The third thing that you gotta pay attention to is language about your conversion project. How are you gonna get moved in from where you are, whether it's in spreadsheet land or you're in a product now and you're moving. I was here, I was using MailChimp, now we're moving into something else. So you should be seeing at least some language about the phases of that migration project, how the timeline is going to roll, when are you going to work on different parts of the migration, and the actual services that you're buying to help you set up the new system and move your data in and test stuff and build forms or email templates or set up a merchant account to help you cut over to the new system. If it says nothing about that, or you see a line that says migration services with a dollar amount with no description of what's going to happen, full stop. Full stop. I don't care if that contract is supposed to be signed tonight by midnight. Do not sign it unless you know specifically what you're buying. Like if you're moving houses and you're hiring a mover, you've got to know how many guys are showing up, when are they coming, how long are they going to take to load stuff in, what's my responsibility before they even show up, and then what are they going to do to unload it? Are they going to dump everything on my front lawn? Or are they going to actually move things into the right rooms? Or are they going to unpack stuff for me? So many variables in a conversion or a migration project. Gotta have them written out in black and white, plain English language so that you know what you're getting and what's on you. So that's super important. That's the fourth thing. The fifth thing that's got to be in your contract in an understandable way is support. What are their support hours? How do you get in touch with them? Do they have a guaranteed turnaround time to respond to you? Are they available only Pacific time, which can be pretty good for an Eastern-based person, East Coast-based person, because they're there later and can help you at the end of the day. So you need to know all of that stuff. Are they closed the week between Christmas and New Year's? I would hope not, but you want to know how your team is going to access support, what kinds of things you can ask them about, how you get a hold of them, and how they're going to respond to you, and if there's any turnaround time. So that's support. Fifth thing in my list, my never-ending list of contracts for you, is the contract renewal. I know, man, you are just signing. It's like a beautiful day. We're going to move out of the system that nobody likes into something brand new and shiny and exciting. And I don't want to have to think about what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years once this contract is done. I'm like all about now. But usually there is language in your contract about renewal periods. So is your contract going to auto renew at the end of the term? Let's pretend it's 3 years. At the end of 3 years, is your contract going to just automatically renew and you're going to get a new invoice? If so, what are those terms? Is it an automatic 1-year renewal, 2 years, 3 years? What is it? When are they going to tell you about any price changes? When will they notify you, hey, you're paying X dollars for this contract, and if we've got any price increases at the end of 3 years, this is how we're going to tell you and how far in advance we're going to tell you so that you can make some decisions about that if the price is going to change up dramatically from what you're paying now. Contract renewal also talks about cancellation. So if you want to cancel, how close to the end of your contract can you do that? How do you need to notify them? I think there's a pro tip here for you, which is even if you're on auto renewal, you can always renegotiate. So let's say 3 years, this is your first contract for 3 years. At the end of 3 years, it's going to auto renew for 2 more years. And they're going to tell you how much more it's going to cost you. Even if your contract auto renews, you can negotiate as long as you go back to that software salesperson or account executive in advance before the renewal. So let's imagine your contract's going to expire on the 30th of September, and you know how much it's going to cost you for the next couple years of your contract, but you want to change that price. You're like, oh, no. I'm not doing this percentage of an increase. We got to talk about that. There's going to be timing when you should be able to go back to your software partner and say, all right, I can't go up 20%. I can go up 10. I think a 10% increase after 3 years is reasonable. Or now I need more records. Like there may be things about your contract that actually need to change before it renews. So put a date in your calendar 3 years from now, a couple months before that renewal period, so that it triggers you to actually go back and look at your contract and start having those conversations with the software salesperson. This leads me to payment, which is the sixth thing on the you got to look at it and understand it list. And that's your billing cycle. Sometimes they call it a billing schedule or an invoice matrix. You know, it can be called all different kinds of things in different contracts, but you need to know. So when are you going to get invoices? Are there quarterly payments? Are you paying it all at once? Are there fees for those overages, and when will they be added to your invoices? The pro tip here is that if you pay upfront, like, all right, I'm paying for the migration, I'm paying for for 1 year of the product, and then next year I'll get charged for another year of the product, and so on. And they're going to send me bills every year, but I'm going to pay for year one and my moving services, my conversion services up front. Usually that invoice magically appears in your inbox about 35 seconds after the contract is fully executed. So get ready. This is another place that if you want to negotiate when you get your invoices, when they charge you for things, you better do it now before you sign that contract. The pro tip is if you've got your current system, paying for that, new system, paying for the first year and the migration services, it's a lot to pay for in one budget year, one fiscal year, or one calendar year. So your job is going to be to move in to that new system as quickly as you can. Do not take the slow path to migration, because what's going to happen is you're going to sit paying for two systems and having prepaid or paid some of your migration costs, and you're not using it. So you get zero return on investment, zip. And year one is always the most expensive year for a software purchase. You're paying for the product, you're paying for the move-in, and you're also still paying for the stuff that you're using now. So the quicker you can hustle and get your stuff moved over from your legacy system to the new system, great, I'm paying for that. And then you can pull the plug or cancel the contract on your legacy system so that there's a limited amount of time that you're paying for two systems, and you're not just like sitting waiting for the magic perfect moment to start to migrate into your new system. That all needs to be thought out and planned out as part of the contract and the contract negotiation process. You might be surprised that I saved price for last. Cost for last. That's because I know that's where your brain goes right away. You are already paying attention to that cost line before you sign it. So it's kind of a no-brainer. You need to know what your investment is going to be. But do you understand what you're paying for and how much each individual thing actually costs? So here's a typical rundown of the costs if you're buying a new fundraising database or CRM. So bundled into the price is going to be, or sometimes called out separately, they're going to be things like the product itself, CRM or database, plus any special modules or add-ons. Yeah, we need membership. Yeah, we need peer-to-peer fundraising. You're going to have those costs called out, not bundled into the core product, but hey, it's $5,000 more a year for me to add peer-to-peer fundraising. So I got base cost, peer-to-peer fundraising adds $5K a year. Migration services, again, I will sound like a broken record, including project management, like whatever they're going to do and bring to the table team-wise to help you make the move and finish. Sustainer migration. This was something that was completely missing from Crystal's contract. She's got an existing fundraising system. She's got a bunch of monthly donors in there with PCI compliant and tokenized stored payment information so that my monthly donation of $35 is just going to go along. That transaction data about me and all my fellow monthly donors needs to be moved into the new fundraising system, set up with the new merchant account and payment gateway. And many times the software company itself has services to help you securely get all that data from your current payment processor, load it into the new fundraising database, and start those payments processing again in their new home. Sometimes you have just a small number of sustainers and it's just as easy for you to contact those people personally. It's a nice donor stewardship thing. Hey, we're moving. We need you to start a new gift over here. We're going to cancel that one. You could even do it for them over the phone if your new system is live. So sustainer migration is a thing, and you need to think about it. If it hasn't come up in your sales or demo conversations, you need to make sure that you know what's going to happen with those monthly donors before you sign the contract. Sometimes there's an extra charge to move those sustainers. It's worth it. I don't care what that fee is. It's totally worth it to have some other pair of hands deal with that stuff in a secure and PCI compliant way. You don't want to touch that payment information. Training services, also something that you're paying for. Even if they say that training services are included, it's good to know how much those cost you because you might need them in the future. If you expand your team or you have turnover or whatever happens, you might want to buy more training services in the future. So how much is that going to cost? And, how are you actually going to get trained to move in? Maybe it's videos. Maybe it's you're going to read these help manuals. Maybe it's going to be a community classroom style training with lots of new users of this system. So you need to know training services and how your team is going to be trained. Integration services is another thing that usually is an additional cost. So let's say I've got fundraising system Potato and I'm using MailChimp. I'm going to move into new fundraising system Banana, and I'm going to keep MailChimp. I want MailChimp and product Banana to talk to each other. That takes an integration, a connection, time, brain power, somebody with tech skills. You are unlikely to be the person who's going to self-serve your integration between MailChimp and your new fundraising system, if that's one thing that you need. So integrations typically are fixed fee, might be $800, might be $15,000, depending on the sophistication, the level of complexity, and the kinds of data sharing that you want to have happen. Is this real time? Is it going to happen overnight, once a day? All of those things need to be sussed out, but look for integration costs. If they're not there, make sure you ask your salesperson if they're included in the migration or the platform fees. Then custom design or custom development costs. So, you have seen donation forms that are just jaw-droppingly beautiful. They seem effective. You love them. You want some special pop-up window to show up when somebody's making a one-time gift to ask them to maybe become a monthly donor. You want some new fancy email templates for your appeals, things like that. That's extra. So they're typically, the software company and your team is going to work together to set up some basic stuff, some basic email templates, some basic forms. If you want anything fancy or special or things that do certain behaviors that are not out of the box, they're not native to your new system, you're going to have to pay somebody to design those things and build them and test them and make sure that they work right. So if you've got any custom development things, that should be called out. You're going to design and build 2 custom donation forms. You're going to design and build 2 responsive email templates for me, one for appeals and one for action alerts, for example. So anything that you need built in there that isn't just like, hey, let's pick your colors and plop a picture in your donation form, you need to have called out in the contract. Custom design and development, transaction fees. So one thing that people don't often realize is that, yes, I make a donation on your site, and let's say you have Stripe or IATS or WorldPay, got a payment processor, payment gateway. They're going to take a little fee. They're going to take 0.29% and a nickel, 50 cents for every ACH or a digital check transaction that they process. So that Stripe or WorldPay or those merchant accounts, what their fees are. They're going to take little bites of every transaction. If your new system also is used to process transactions with Stripe, with WorldPay, with IATS, it is very common for your platform to also take a bite, to also charge a transaction fee that they take right off the top. So make sure that it's called out in your contract and in your fees how much they're taking. Maybe they take some amounts for US currency and a different amount for an international currency. Maybe they charge a different amount for American Express gifts versus a MasterCard donation. So that all has to be in the contract too. So look for that. And then finally, the hourly rate. If you need something built or created or enhanced after you're finished setting stuff up, 6 months later, you're ready to turn your attention to something new and shiny, you want to level something up, you're going to need some help, most likely. So if you don't have developers in-house, designers in-house, software experts in-house, it's really common to go back to the software partner and say, hey, can you guys build me this thing? Can you add more custom fields? Can you do something fancy for me? So it's really helpful to have a reference in the contract that if they need to work any extra hours or you're going to call them back to do something else, that you know what the hourly rate is, because it can vary wildly. The average right now, I think, and I'm making this up off the top of my head, the average right now for any software vendor out there is generally about, I don't know, $150, $175 an hour. Could go up. I know some software vendors where it's $200, it's $250 to have somebody do a thing. So make sure that you have that in writing in your contract that you can refer to. If they quote you $145 in the contract, 6 months later, you go ask them to build something special and fancy, and they say, okay, that's $200 an hour. Point them back to the contract. You may actually be dealing with a different salesperson or a different person inside the software company's team, and they might not know that you were quoted $150 an hour. So gently say, hey, here's our contract. We have a rate of X throughout this contract period. So that was, 25 hot minutes of please don't make a mistake. You need the detailed list of the functionality. You need any limits in your contract. You're going to look for language about the conversion project, detailed training information, how you're going to get support, how your contract's going to be renewed, the billing cycle, when you're going to have to pay, and the cost. Not just the bottom line cost, but all the different costs that you will be assessed to use this new system. And I know it's a lot, you guys. I totally know that it's a lot, but you do not want to be like Crystal, who realized, sadly, that she did not purchase real form building services. She made some assumptions when she signed that contract, and now we're trying to figure out how her forms are going to get built. Is her team going to do it? Are we going to ask the software partner to include them to be nice? Are we going to make some agreements that some will be on the organization team and some will be on the software company's team? It's a mystery. I don't know. We're going to talk about it with them in a couple of weeks. But don't be like Crystal. Sorry, Crystal. And names have been changed. Don't be like Jenny. Don't be like David or Tasha, all these people who pinged me last week and said, do I have a contract horror story to tell you? It's preventable. And once you've got the contract services and those things in shape, then you send it over to your attorney for review and all that kind of mediation and clauses and stuff that we don't understand. Ask your vendor to talk you through the contract. If you're like, I don't have any of these things, I have 3 of them, whatever your circumstances happen to be, just grab your salesperson and say, hey, I got 7 things I need to see in this contract, or things I don't understand or that seem very fuzzy and vague, got to be nailed down in the contract. It is a legally binding document. And along with never buying software that you do not have an approved budget for, that's a side note, you got to know what you're purchasing. Your team is counting on that. Your new software partner is counting on you understanding what you're buying and not causing a ruckus in the middle of migration because you skipped a step in the sales cycle. Your leadership and your board and your supporters are counting on you to actually be an informed consumer when you're signing contracts and buying software. So due diligence, get people to explain it. Please don't use jargon. Please change the contract language. You can ask for all of that stuff, and you should. You absolutely should. This isn't about somebody shoving an echo sign in front of you and then you just mindlessly signing. This is as much due diligence as you put into your functionality requirements and your search and your decision making. You got one last hill to climb, and that's understanding your contract before you sign it, because it's awful hard to get out of it. Next week, I hope this was helpful, I guess. I hope it was. And these are things that I have just picked up along the way in the many years that I've been dealing with nonprofit software contracts. I'm actually I've got a bunch of detailed notes here for today's Facebook Live, and I'm going to turn it into a new blog post on my site. So I will come back in to my social media channels and I will add the links to the blog post, something that you might be able to read and actually point your leadership to, or your attorney to, or your software salesperson to. Next week, next Friday, I can't even believe it. It's October 1st next Friday, you guys. Like, we are in fall, and now we're in the exciting part of the roller coaster as we get close to end of year fundraising season. So yeah, we're all getting ready for Giving Tuesday. We're all finalizing our campaign plans. And so next week, I'm going to spend 15 or 20 minutes talking about how to get your website ready to be a fundraising engine for you in end of year fundraising season. There's some simple things that you can do to make it easier for people to use your site to give, because we're going to be asking them a lot to give over the next few months. So please come back and join me 12:30 Eastern time, right here wherever you're seeing this video, October 1st at 12:30 Eastern. So thanks, everybody. I see a question from Stephanie. Stephanie, I missed your question, so let's answer it. Can you ask not to pay the full amount until the migration is finished? You can ask for anything. It is not uncommon to say, I'm going to pay for the migration up front. I'm going to pay a portion of the software costs, like 25%, and then I don't want to pay for the rest of it until I'm live. Kind of incentivizes the software company to get you moved in and trained up so that you're using it. So I've seen that. I've seen people say migration services are really expensive, and can we pay for them throughout the whole contract? So if you've got a 3-year contract, maybe you pay for 1/3 of the migration services in year 1, 1/3 of the migration services in year 2, and the final 1/3 in year 3. So Stephanie, it looks like that helped you. I'm glad you hung in there for me to actually look over to the other side of my screen and see your question. So if you've got questions, if you've got comments, if you need a little help with your software contract, please reach out to me. You can, Maureen at meetmaureen.com. Go over to my website, meetmaureen.com. Lots of free resources and blog posts and worksheets for stuff like this. So with that, I'll let y'all go. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday, a great, restful, and restorative weekend. And I will see you here next Friday at 12:30. Thanks, guys. See you later. Bye.